Thank you, Mary, and thank you, everyone. Hold on a second, let me get my stuff out here. My name is Scott McNair. I'd like to thank you all for allowing me to speak with you today. I am a member of Indivisible Baldwin County, and I'd also like to say that listening to what has been said here, I realize that there's just not a diverse group of people in front of me. This is actually family. And so I would like to say, hola mi familia, hello my family. I love you all. Thank you so much. Now, before I talk about Indivisible, I'd like to share a little bit of background about myself. I was born in Chicago in 1970. When I was 10 years old, my parents moved to Magnolia Springs. They wanted to be closer to my grandparents who were getting up in age. My folks bought the house that now is known as the Magnolia Springs Bed and Breakfast, right in the middle of Magnolia Springs. And at the time, now it's beautiful, but at the time it was kind of just falling apart. Like my brother actually fell through the floor at one point. So we had to do a lot of TLC to make it livable, and that meant a lot of trips to the hardware store. So one of those trips, I had to use the restroom, so I excused myself, and that was when I noticed something that kind of threw me for a loop. It was a hallway, and on the right we had a bathroom men and women, and on the left we had a bathroom men and women. And I was like, why do they have 4 bathrooms? I mean, I know that, some places have like a single unisex bathroom, and some places have, a men's and a women's, but I mean, this is Foley, Alabama, Ace Hardware. Do they really have so much traffic that they need 4 bathrooms? And then I noticed also there's a water fountain over here, water fountain and water fountain. Still confused. And then I noticed if I squinted really hard and I looked just the right way over the words men and women, I could see the words white, colored. And that's when I realized it. That was my first encounter with the legacy of segregation. Now, from a legal standpoint, they were just ordinary fixtures. But if you looked past that whitewash, you could still see the truth underneath. They were a legacy of a system that promised separate but equal, but they delivered anything but equal. I went through the Foley school system. The middle school, Foley Middle School, was located in a part of town that's called Aaronville. Now, Aaronville was historically an all-black community. And like so many places across the South, black families had been steered. Sometimes they were subtly steered. Sometimes they weren't very subtly steered into specific neighborhoods. And often those neighborhoods had fewer resources and they had fewer opportunities as well. So when I attended Foley Middle School, what struck me most as a student was the difference between all the schools. The elementary school was great. High school, great, modern, well-maintained. The middle school, not so much. It was in kind of rough shape. It smelled, and there were holes in the walls, and if you opened a door too fast, you could see critters scurrying into the corners. And later on, I realized that before it was Foley Middle School, it was known as the colored school. It was the Aaronville School, and that was yet another remnant of that separate but equal system. A phrase that promised fairness, but actually delivered inequality. And much like those bathroom signs, the labels had been removed, but the gap in investment and in care had not been. And the racism I saw was not limited just to the buildings. It was woven into everyday life. It was in the coded language that adults use, like criminals and violent or unintelligent. But the children would hear what's said at home, and even when the adults think they aren't listening, the phrase, little pitchers have big ears. And so those sentiments made it into the schoolyards. I saw a lot of fights going through Foley schools. There was white on black, there was black on white. Sometimes it happened on a weekly basis, sometimes it happened a little more than weekly. And the kids involved would be punished in the school. This was the good old days of the paddle. And so they'd be paddled, and they'd be sent home where the punishment would continue, generally with a belt. But the larger lessons that they walked away with wasn't about the discipline that they got as a result of their actions. Instead, it was about the division that caused those actions to occur. Now, among the adults, that discrimination often took quieter forms. someone might be denied a loan, or they might be passed over for a job, or they might even be followed around a grocery store, just to make sure that they don't, take a few extra things with them. They were small actions, and they were repeated over and over, that they continue to reinforce who belonged, and more importantly, who did not belong. So what I came to understand was, even as a child, was that racism didn't always disappear when the laws changed. Sometimes they just covered it over. They whitewashed it, like those signs on the bathroom walls. Just behind a few coats of paint, made a little bit less visible, but they were still there. Now, as a child, I saw the physical remnants of segregation in buildings and in neighborhoods and in the stores. But as an adult, I began to see something else. Inequality does not simply vanish when the laws change. It actually evolves, and it hides, and it grows, and it festers. Now, in recent years, I've watched those same patterns of fear and suspicion and exclusion directed toward immigrant families, particularly within the Hispanic community. About a year ago, my wife, Stacy, and I joined Indivisible Baldwin County. Now, for those of you who are unaware, the Indivisible movement is a progressive grassroots organization in the U.S. It emerged as a response to the election of Donald Trump. Its goal was very simple. It was to resist authoritarianism and to promote democratic values. My wife and I joined the Baldwin County chapter because we were, quite frankly, alarmed at the direction that we felt that our sitting president was taking our country. We were witnessing the gutting of our national institutions, the dismantling of our educational system, the demolishing of our national monuments, the selling off of our parks and preserves to the highest bidders. We saw him placing his family members and campaign donors into positions of power. And I can go on and on and on, but the end result is we watched as he gutted the good name of the U.S. in the international community. But the thing that struck me the most was his complete and total lack of regard for the immigrant community, as well as the militarization and the weaponization of the Department of Homeland Security and ICE. It started, we would hear stories about the harsh conditions of ICE detainees. We heard about detention centers where human beings were being packed together like cattle and sleeping on concrete floors. They're giving inadequate food and water and unclean food and water. I heard these stories, and I was quite frankly shocked at the stories of cruelty by the hands of the agents in these centers. But they said that these people were, the worst of the worst. They were hardened criminals. They were rapists. They were murderers. They were thieves. They were torturers. But then we started hearing stories a little bit closer to home. People in our own area that were being detained. And these were not rapists and murderers and torturers. They weren't violent offenders. They were just regular people like you and I. A lot of them barely old enough to drive, 16, 17, 18 years old. They're being stopped by ICE in the early morning hours while they were driving to work. I remember one particular incident. I think this was about an eye-opener for me. There was a young gentleman. He was screaming in pain on the side of the road. He was clutching his arm. And the police were telling him, oh, no, it's fine. It's just a dislocated arm. Once you get it popped back in the socket, you're going to be okay. Well, no, he was not fine. Actually, his arm was broken as a result of the scuffle with the police. And he was not a rapist. He was not a murderer. He was not a thief. He was not a torturer. He was just a kid. He was just trying to get to work. So all of these definitions that we hear about, all these detentions rather, that we hear about are awful, absolutely awful and disgusting. And any one of them, standing on their own, would be justification for us all to be speaking out. But I think, in my mind, the worst part of it was the ripple effect that these actions had, not just on these young people, but on their families as well. You see, what a lot of people don't realize is that a lot of the time when an ICE agent reaches into a vehicle on a random early Tuesday morning and pulls a young gentleman out of his work truck, they're not just taking a young gentleman away, they're leaving behind a young wife. They're leaving behind small children. A lot of times they're leaving behind elderly parents. And they're also taking away these families' sole means of support. That young gentleman in the back of the ICE van, well, he was the breadwinner for the family, and they were probably barely getting along to begin with. And now all of a sudden these families don't have any money to buy food or diapers or to get their kids to the doctor's appointments. And even if they had the money, their only means of transportation was probably just towed. And so they don't even have a way to get to the store to get what they need. Right now, Baldwin County, and these numbers are shocking, please open your ears a little bit more, because Baldwin County is experiencing roughly 250 detainments by ICE per month. That's more than the entire rest of the state of Alabama combined. That works out to about 3,000 per year, about 60 per week. On any given day in Baldwin County, you can expect about 9 people to be detained by ICE. I believe the other day we had 14 that were detained in a single day. And I'm not talking about hardened criminals. I have yet to hear a story about a hardened criminal being picked up by ICE in Baldwin County. I'm not talking about murderers or rapists or any of that. I'm talking about hardworking men and women. They're just trying to get to work. They came to this country to find a better way of life. They came to this country because of something that we like to call the American dream. But unfortunately, that dream has turned into something of a nightmare for them, because as of today, we've seen close to 3,500 detainments in Baldwin County alone. And that number keeps on growing. During the month of May, we saw 264 people detained by ICE in Baldwin County. And so as ICE activity ramped up in Baldwin County, Indivisible started to hear more and more about these stories. And so we decided, well, something needs to be done. And if somebody needs to do it, why not us? We're already holding rallies around the county, talk against our current regime. So we had the ability to get that word out. Our rallies' messages shifted. We still spoke out against the other faults of the government. There were many of them to speak out about, but we became more focused on the plight of our immigrant neighbors. It started out at first just a handful of families that we helped out, people that we personally knew who'd been impacted by the current administration's actions. We started to request donations of food and diapers at our rallies, and when people came, they would bring a sign, because it's a rally, but they would also bring a bag of food and diapers and other essential needs. And if they happened to bring any cash donations, then they would use those to kind of fill the gaps for anything that the donations themselves didn't, the food and such donations didn't cover. We were able to help support those families, but the number of people who needed help kept growing. And as the days and the weeks and the months went by, word spread throughout the immigrant community, hey, there are people that are actually out there trying to help us. And we did, and we do want to help, because I can't help this family here and ignore this family here. And so as a result, our family kept on growing. As of the latest count, and I may be off by a handful, but we're currently assisting around 125 children from about 40 different families. And these kids range in anywhere from newborn to 18 years old. And we also have, some pregnant mamas to be in the mix as well. And as any parent is very well aware, the needs of a toddler are going to be different from the needs of an infant, are going to be different from the needs of a high schooler, are going to be different from the needs of a middle schooler. So our donations had to be more diverse as well to keep up with the needs. So as the number of families grew, our operation grew as well. It started, we would just wheel a little wagon to our rallies and get it filled up. And then we went from a wagon to a small storage unit. And then we went from a small storage unit to double the size of that storage unit. And then we added a second unit and a refrigerator and freezer to store the perishable goods. So, however, the number of families that we needed to help also kept growing. And it started to outstrip the amount of donations that we could raise at our rallies. And so Indivisible started a new organization, which was dedicated entirely to the immigrant community. It's called the Immigrant Family Action Network, or IFAN. IFAN's goal is very simple. When someone in the community has a need, we provide the need. If we experience a sudden shortage of, say, size 7 diapers or baby juice or baby formula, we reach out within the network and somebody will provide, hopefully. We've developed a small network of drop-off locations where people can provide donations. And a lot of the families that we assist are afraid to drive because they're afraid to get on the road, and I don't blame them. Or they may not have a car because it may have been towed away. And so we will deliver to them. Initially, we just had one person handling the deliveries. She became overwhelmed very quickly. And so she trained 2 or 3 others to help, and then 2 or 3 more. And now we have a very small but very dedicated group that will take the deliveries right to their doors. And as I said before, there are several expectant moms that we help out. And can you imagine this, you're 7 months pregnant, and then you find out your husband has been detained or been deported, and you don't have any money, you don't have any means to work. And so we provide baby beds and car seats and baby clothes and other necessities such as diapers and baby wipes. But it's not just about food and diapers. Those aren't the only services we provide. We help to locate any family members who have been taken by ICE, and we help to facilitate communications between those detainees and their loved ones. We give rides to court dates or to doctor's appointments or to legal counsel. We give advice and we give comfort during hard times. We help to provide needed documentation such as passports or birth certificates. And if at the end of the day, the family decides that they just can't take this anymore and they just want to leave, well, then we help raise money for plane tickets and for luggage. But it's not all about necessities, because these are children we're talking about, and these are, they're kids. They've been forced into an adult world against their wills. And so a large focus for us, for me, is for trying to preserve their childhood as much as we can. On one particular occasion, one of our members rented a bounce house for the weekend, and we brought a bunch of snacks over, and we took it to one of the harder hit trailer parks so the kids in the trailer park could just have a weekend of, bouncing and having fun and eating snacks. And for Christmas, this past Christmas, we delivered toys and makeup and other items for the kids on our list. Now, I'm talking a lot about the immigrant community, and it does require a lot of focus, but the immigrant community is not the only thing that Indivisible does. In addition to our rallies, we also try to affect real change in the local community. For example, this past Christmas, just talking about Christmas, we had a holiday exchange at Java J's in Bay Minette. And the way this worked was people would donate items such as food or clothing or toys or Christmas decorations. And then residents of the community, anybody, could walk in and take what they wanted. There was no money changing hands. There was no judgment. It was a huge success, absolutely huge success. My personal favorite part of it was the kids. And I remember one little girl in particular. She had this toy that she found, and she went to her mom. She said, "Mom, can I take this toy?" And the mom looked at it. She said, "Yeah, sure." And the girl's eyes got as big as saucers, because this girl is used to being told no because we don't have the money. So once she realized she could take that, she's like, "Well, what about that toy?" Yeah, sure. All right. What about that one? Yeah, why not? So big bundle of toys she walked out with, and a big smile on her face, and a big smile on my face too. Another story about a mom who was a special needs teacher. The year before, she was homeless. She and her 2 kids were homeless. Well, this year, they had a home, but they didn't have any Christmas decorations. Well, they walked out with Christmas decorations, and they had a Christmas that year. And that also I had a big smile on my face the whole time. Holiday Exchange was such a huge success. What we're doing it again this year, except we're not limiting it to Christmas time. We're doing something called Jolly in July at Java J's, and that's a lot of J's, I realize that, but we would love for y'all to be a part of that. We'll give more information on that. So there are a lot of people who think of the Indivisible movement as nothing more than a bunch of people who just stand around waving signs, being angry, and yeah, we do that. I mean, it is important that we need to let the people, the public at large, know that what's happening in our country is not right. I am fond of the saying, silence is compliance, because it's true. If we don't speak out, then it's the same as allowing our country to devolve. Right now, we've got 2 events planned for the next month. 1 week from today, the 14th, right here in Fairhope, we're going to be holding our first annual rally celebrating and supporting members of the LGBTQ plus community. This event will be called Love Makes a Family. This will be the first, but it will not be the last. Now, for those of you in the loop, Governor Kay Ivey recently signed a proclamation stating that June is Stable Family Month. Yeah, yeah, we all know what that's coded to mean. That is a very unsubtle jab at the gay community. So we want to show that families come in all sorts of forms. And the key ingredient in a stable family is love. And we would love for you to come out and show your support. And then also July 4th marks the 1-year anniversary of Indivisible, Baldwin County. It's hard to believe that it's only been a year. But we will be celebrating it the same way we started it. That is right there on the streets of Foley around Heritage Park. And the theme this year is, we want an America worth celebrating. And as always, we would love to see some of your faces there. I'd love to see all of your faces there. But and of course, we couldn't have done any of this without your support. All of us are so grateful for everything, whether it's words of encouragement or donations of food and other items, or if it's coming out and carrying a sign. We appreciate you, and we love each and every one of y'all. I am a firm believer in the inherent worth and dignity of every single person, and that we should treat each other with justice and with equity and with compassion. And that's what Indivisible is all about. One of my favorite quotes, and I say this a lot, was by John Lewis, the late congressman and civil rights activist. A very simple but profound statement, and that is that we are one people. We are one family. We are the human family. And what affects one of us affects us all. Now, we shouldn't look at the suffering of another person and say, oh, thank God that's not me. I've been guilty of that, but I try to open my eyes instead. Instead of just shooing them aside, we should help to raise them up, because they are our family. They're our brother or our sister in need, and family helps family. And that human family is not constrained by where you were born, or the color of your skin, or who you choose to love, or what language you speak even. The human family is universal. Now, I would like to thank you so much for having me here today. I would like to point out on the board that we have QR codes if you're interested in helping. We have QR codes for how to join Indivisible, how to join the Immigrant Families Action Network, as well as if you want to make a monetary donation, we have links to that as well. And other than that, if you have any questions, either I or somebody else in the Indivisible family would be happy to answer them. Thank y'all so much. Thank you.
Do we have questions for Scott and others? Answer everything? Where will the rally be in Fairhope?
The rally in Fairhope will be at the corner of, I can't think of the name. I'm awful with road names. Greeno and Fairhope Avenue. Yeah, right by the Chick-fil-A. So, what's that? Yeah, right over here. Yeah, just hang a left out of here and you can't miss it. I'm sorry?
And we'll further on what's happening on 4th of July, and where's the gathering going to be?
Okay.
What is it going to entail?
It's a rally, and rally is basically a nice way of saying protest. And it's going to be at the corner of Highway 59 and Highway 98, right there at Heritage Park. it's where we had it 1 year ago, so it's kind of special to us, and we look forward to seeing you out there. What time? 9 to 11? Yeah, 9 to 11.
A question.
Yes.
Where is your main office? And if you want to volunteer,
Our main office is the back of our car. Yeah, it's we're a diverse and dispersed group, and we don't have a physical location, just as it's mainly a bunch of people. Now we do have storage locations, but they're located in storage units or in somebody's home or apartment or something like that. But the best way to get us is by either messaging us through Facebook or reaching us through such means as that, and we'll be able to do whatever it needs to be done.
And the website is Indivisible of Baldwin County.
What's the?
We also have a signal group, there's a QR code back there, so it's just an app, a messaging app, so if you want to get that QR code.
All right, yeah, we have in the back of the room, there are, we have some QR codes and some pamphlets that, not pamphlets, flyers that give more information about how to reach out to us.
Yeah, there's a signal link back there. The signal is just a messaging app where we have 3 groups. We have a community group, we like to chat and rant. We have a updates chat where I just post basically events that are coming up. So not much chatter in that one. That's more private. And then we have a volunteer chat. So if you want to be part of that, all you do is message me. I usually try to hop on with a Google Meet with somebody, so like let them where you best fit with us, and then I'll add you to that group. That's kind of fun. You also message me on Facebook on your favorite.
And we have those flyers back there too. Yeah.
Yes, I had a question about the numbers that you're talking about.
Yes, sir.
The number of immigrants that are paying.
Yes, sir.
Where are we getting
Well, in the beginning, it was back of napkin statistics, but as we started realizing the levels that were being taken, we started hitting the various, and Teresa can probably speak out on this better than I can, hitting the various jail view and so forth pages. And Teresa, you can take it from here. She's the one that does the actual heavy lifting on that one. I'm just the mouth.
I found out where they were doing the temporary holdup for ICE. This took trial and error. So the process is that when they take them to the street, they take them to Mobile, what used to be their office for process and all that stuff, and they send it to Birmingham. So now they're using it to register every immigrant that they take. From there, they pass them to Bayman Net. So Bayman Net has every agreement to the temporary hold for ICE. They're going to be there for for a few days only, because they have a pattern of Tuesdays and Fridays to send it to Louisiana. The thing is that all those mugshots have been, since they're public view, every single day I screenshot them and put them and add them, and so they could promote it. So this is the reality. And besides that, I got a lot of illegals. So basically that's it.
She's tracking them on the websites for the meeting every day. They track their calculations. Yes. I'd like to add that I go to the Baldwin County Commission, and they scoped out, they set up what's going on there. The 287G agreements that the Baldwin County Sheriff's Office has made with ICE, and they have recently put a statement out saying that they're going to start holding information, like before the federal government has kind of put the kibosh on sharing from the local enforcement agencies sharing their information. So this is all just doing like laborious work every day, mostly on streets as part of that. We're trying to transfer people, right? I mean, there's other people that help us with that. We're just get our own data because they won't share it.
And they was shut down the mug shops.
And speaking of the mug shots, if you look up on this slide right here, the pictures in that little grid there, those are all from the month of May, and that's not all of them. That's just some of them. I mean, there were 264 total. So
I'd like to mention that we're watching legislation that the governor is trying to get passed, and I don't know, I apologize, I don't know if it has passed, that makes it illegal in Alabama to harbor an undocumented person. Of course, they don't use the word undocumented.
no, of course they don't.
And their definition of harboring is extended to include aid of any kind. So we need to watch that closely.
Another thing I'd like to point out is that if you take an undocumented person over state lines for whatever reason, whether it's to a doctor's appointment or to help them self-deport or what have you, that is considered trafficking in the state of Alabama, and that can get you arrested as well.
But it's not trafficking safety.
No, of course not. And that's just upholding the law or whatever. I don't know. SB 63? 53, SB 53. Yes, ma'am.
Scott, do you have any means of where they're, going in and raiding and getting these immigrants as a deterrent where volunteers can go and document treatment?
As far as where they're picking them up on the street, for a while we did have, and we still do to some degree, have some documenters that would go out, and there are hot spots. It's hard to predict. Whoa, hello. It's hard to predict where exactly they're going to hit. I mean, they like to keep it on the sly, but there are hot spots. For instance, middle of Silver Hill is one of those hot spots that I can think of off the top of my head. And we would have people that would drive through and document just with their phone, and we still do this, document with our phone, and document the arrest so that 5 years or however long down the road we can say, yes, this happened, this is how it happened, and don't ignore it. We used to get out of our vehicle and say, we just want to get some information. What is your name? Do you have any family you'd like contacted? Is there anything you'd like done with your vehicle? Anything along those lines, so we could reach out to the family involved and just help them along. But we ran into some issues. Actually, my wife specifically ran into an issue where she was told a lie. She was told, oh no, these are U.S. citizens that are being detained, but they were not. And then you need to back off because you're impeding an investigation, which she was not. And she went to her car, and I called her on the phone, and she picked up the phone. And at that point, the agent was standing however many 100 yards away. He was holding a device and pointing it at my wife. And when she answered the phone, she said, hello. And I heard a robo voice say, this call is being recorded. And yeah. And if I'd heard that from anybody else, I would have said, yeah, right, whatever. But no, it happened to me. I will not lie. And so that's when we decided it would probably be best for us to step back on that aspect of it, but we still do the documentation part. And I don't know if that answered your question. Okay, good.
Teresa wanted me to add some things.
Yes.
How, so with Baldwin County actually okaying the commission okaying the 287G agreement. The sheriff's department had been operating under that since the fall. They signed an agreement with DHS, and they've been operating under it, but they had not been being paid actually by the federal lots of money until the commission approved it a couple months ago. And so now, with that agreement being officially signed by the commission, the numbers have increased. So Teresa's saying, I mean, like, the numbers of people that they're trying to take because they can dip into federal money now and not our taxpayer dollars. So, Teresa was wanting me to say, you know, like, just this week she's seen 17 or 18 people in a day on average in the past week or two. And the other thing I wanted to make sure to note is that, to be perfectly clear, they are not just taking people who are undocumented, they are taking people with documentation. There are people who have work permits that are good through 2030 and they do not care. They're showing their documentation and it doesn't matter. They are just trying to get their numbers up. To be perfect, I just want to be really clear. Is there anything else?
We thank you. We thank you for all you're doing.
Thank you.